Hey, hello everyone. Just a minute or two before the promised 10:30 start. And we're gonna have Erica join any second. Yay! I think we need to do that. All right. So happy. Hello, there you are.
I think that was much too easy, actually. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, especially considering how nothing would respond last week when we tried. When I was trying to get on. Anyway, I like how
Yeah.
you match my Hilma art. Good
I
on
did
you.
that intentionally. I whipped out my can of paint
Fantastic.
this morning and made sure that we painted the
No,
walls.
no, 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 your outfit, your
Oh, my
shirt
outfit! I did that
matches.
too.
Yeah, of course.
Everything.
Always with the coordination.
Yes, exactly.
So, welcome. And we'll just hang out a little bit as a couple people maybe join us.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
happy birthday, happy 277th to our dear Marianna Martinez.
Yay! Love her. I'm trying to adjust my camera here. Let's see if I can do that.
Yeah, I'm scared to touch mine. Anyway,
We got to get the keyboard in a little bit at least. Okay,
yeah,
this
that
looks
looks
good.
great.
Yeah.
Hello. Um, so yeah, this May 4th birthday in 1744. I just think it's so cool that she was born exactly halfway between Haydn and Mozart in the same, part of the world. Um, yeah, 12 years after Haydn, 12 years before Mozart. And that she had some connection with both of them, like significant connection.
Exactly, exactly. And I
Yeah.
mean, I think you really can hear that in the music. Just, so I
Hmm.
find that so interesting. I think when I was younger, I didn't make these connections as easily in terms of tracing kind of the evolution of piano, sonata, and all that type of thing.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, we had this piece missing. Uh, she is a significant connector there, I think,
yes,
between those two composers,
yes,
literally.
yeah.
So, yeah. So, hi, all the way from Canterbury. Ooh, hi. That must be Dan.
It is
Nice. So
Dan.
nice of you to join us. Thank you.
Yeah.
And yeah, just do you want to just start by speaking a little bit about what you've discovered just about Mariana Martinez, or
Sure. Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, so this was one of the first pieces I think that I recorded for our channel. And when I started doing the research about her, I was just absolutely flabbergasted about how well known she was in Vienna at the time, which I think got me, you know, how you go down these rabbit holes as you're researching all this. And it opened my eyes to that at this time in Vienna, I think women actually had a little bit more of a chance of
exactly.
making their place in the musical, well, in the world in general. They were
Hmm.
accepted as equals, more so than I think maybe in other parts of the world. Um,
Although not fully. I mean,
Not
you
fully,
couldn't
no.
go to, yeah,
Right. But
certain.
more so than I think in some other situations. But anyway, so I found out that, you know, she became a court musician, and that type of thing. But the first thing that really fascinated me, I think because I have like I like to picture scenes in my head. And the first thing that I read about her was that she grew up in the same building where the Esterhazy family, which was, of course, Haydn's one. They were patrons of many different,
Right.
but of Haydn. But so anyway, the Esterhazys were on the first floor of this building, and then Mariana's family was on the third floor of the same building. And
Hmm.
then guess who was sitting in the attic?
Right.
It was Haydn, right?
Haydn in the attic. Oh, sorry, never mind.
Exactly. I mean, so Haydn was sitting up in the attic, and then so I kept reading, and then, you know, I knew that Mariana was a singer as well as a pianist. So she studied piano, I believe, for at least some time with Haydn. But also, what I thought was amazing, because we're both collaborators with
Mm-hmm.
singers, is that Haydn served as her pianist for much of the time when she was singing, at least in
Exactly.
and such. I
What
mean,
an amazing idea.
try to picture that, right? All in the
Mm-hmm.
same building. You've got
Yeah.
this kind of interesting, I don't know, glimpse into the way that society and the arts worked.
And
So,
I think it's interesting to also just look at the floor, like the noble Esterhazy's. Perhaps now it would be the other way around. The penthouse is the glam place, but they got the ground floor
yeah,
because they were, and probably the ceilings were highest on the ground floor, knowing European buildings like that. And then a couple of stories up,
yep,
middle
yep,
class Martinez family, and then again a couple more stories up, at the very top, attic, more like a garret, not a penthouse in any way. Was this yeah, humble at that point anyway.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, so
Um,
interesting.
so I just found that so intriguing. And when I played through, I think I maybe read her, I think there's an E major sonata as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Yeah,
But I read that one first, and I liked it. But then when I hit the slow movement of the A major,
it's gorgeous. Yeah,
I
fantastic.
I was just really moved,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew I had to record it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've performed it a few times because I just love it.
Yeah,
So,
I'm so excited and actually kind of relieved to discover more and more about her. Like she just seems like such an important piece that was missing from my understanding of
mm,
musical history, and listening to her music, her vocal music, her orchestral music, her piano concerto. Oh, it just gives me such joy.
yeah,
It's so full of light and oh, so exciting. So
yeah.
happy birthday, Mariana.
Yay!
So tell us about your process in studying that piece and getting it ready to record to our piano music she wrote YouTube channel, which hopefully you're all subscribed to. Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, it was actually an interesting evolution for me, at least for me, because when you look at a score of Haydn or Mozart, you are looking at a highly edited, usually,
Mm-hmm.
score to some degree. Plus, I think when maybe their works were published, there was more decision making put into the finished product. With this sonata, when I looked at it and when I first played through it, I knew that it was beautiful and that I loved it. But I also felt that there was something missing.
Hmm.
And it wasn't necessarily that I thought it was Mariana's fault or anything. I think it was actually, it just has to do with the fact that maybe not a lot of works by women were published. So if it was published, this was, you know, I don't know. I don't know if when Haydn submitted his to a publisher, if his were also a little bit more on the skeletal side. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, certainly those scores probably evolved over being published so many times by so many different publishers, whereas her music, I think, was largely erased after her death in 1812. So
Right.
how many publications of it
Yeah.
happened? So
So,
yeah.
so for me, looking at it, I was facing the question of what do I do? Because I'm very much the type of performer that reads what's on the page.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, when I cook, I don't mess with the recipe. When I play a piece
Okay.
of music, I don't often feel comfortable for various reasons. I'm not an improviser, whatever. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't trained how to take a piece of music in this style and how to add embellishments, how to add appropriate ornamentation. So for me, yeah, I was a little bit in I don't want to say a crisis. It was in a complete crisis mode because I didn't want to just record it the way it was on the page.
Mm-hmm.
Because A, I didn't think it did the piece justice.
Mm.
And B, I wasn't convinced that that's how she would have performed it herself.
Right.
Right?
Well, the thing is, the pianists or musicians at that time, I think there was a great emphasis not only on learning to read music and harmony and history and all that, but improvisation was equally important as a skill. So perhaps if
Yes.
she wrote it down for herself, she didn't need to write all of it because she would do that just naturally. Or maybe any pianist in that day would just know it's fine. You add stuff if you want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I think as a pianist today, I didn't grow up with that mentality
No.
or that training. So I
That's for
really,
jazz. You just only do that for jazz. Yeah.
right. And so anyway, so I was really faced with that. I decided I did want to break outside of my comfort zone and try my hand on our very safe YouTube channel of adding my own embellishments
Mm.
and playing around with ornamentation and doing not just what's on the page, but what I felt brought the music to life and helped connect my own personality with Mariana's.
Oh,
I think it's
fantastic.
Marianna. Marianna.
Mariana, yeah.
Marianna.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the beginning of it. So
Okay,
yeah.
fantastic. So then, was it kind of at first you intuitively played around, added some stuff, and then how did you, or were you still kind of doing that in the recording?
Oh no. Well, then that was one of my questions. Do I decide that I'm going to just improvise on the spot when I record, or am I going to plan it? I decided because I'm such a newbie at this, I decided I really had to plan it out.
Yeah,
And at first, I even said, "Oh well, I'll plan it out, but I won't write it in the score because that's actually hard to notate, right? All that stuff."
yeah, yeah.
So at first, I was just gonna plan it in my head and then do it, but then that didn't work either. Like I very much have a hard time making up my mind. So then my
Oh, I
third
see.
stage was, no, I'm going to go ahead and make the decisions and write it in the score and really make sure that I've come to own my decisions.
And that makes sense because of, well, we're both that very visual kind of person, like the sight reading channel being the,
Yes.
yeah, it's all about reading. So that makes sense that you wrote it down so that there was never a doubt as you're in that recording process.
Right. Although I would say again that, figuring out a way to notate a lot of this more fancy embellishment I added became a challenge because how do you write it in a score, right? Then you can read it.
Right.
I wish I had taken some pictures of my notation system, but there
Yeah.
were times even that I would like look at my music like, what did I mean?
Okay.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
So you don't have images of this scratchy
Maybe I
version?
should. Maybe after we do this, I'll take a few snips and put them up on Twitter, and then you can maybe grab them,
Yeah,
Sandra.
it'd be nice to have them here too on Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Oh, we just gave it away that Erica's the Twitter gal and I'm the Instagram girl. We
that's
just gave
okay.
it away. No more mystery.
But anyway, but I think this was part of the process too. That it's so interesting that I had to struggle through an evolution of how to get to this point of even being able to record it comfortably and perform it.
Mm-hmm. No, it
So.
was, I think, a very successful exercise. I really love what you did with it. I've listened through and kind of with the score and said, oh, cool idea.
Well,
I
thank
really
you.
like it.
Yeah, and I think I would add, oh, you were asking about kind of my process too. Again, I don't have an education in this. I'm not really well versed in performance practice or even ornamentation. But I watched a few videos with Robert Levin. I think that's how you
Okay,
say
yeah.
his name.
Mm-hmm.
Who, if you don't know about Robert Levin, folks, he's kind of one of the premier, uh, like classical, I guess I would say classical era pianists, um,
Mm-hmm.
who really specializes in that era and specializes in the improvisatory side of it.
I think he's most famous for he did a version of Mozart Requiem. Like
Ah,
there's a published version. Oh, did you do the Levin Requiem or he's well
interesting.
known for that. So reconstructing kind of performance
Yeah,
practice.
but he's
Yeah,
done at least, there's two, I think, videos on YouTube all about improvisation.
beautiful.
Um, I think it's mostly like Mozart or Haydn or both. And that was really instructive for
Hmm.
me because he even shows clips um, and then he even showed how a lot of times these composers would actually write out a lot of the ornamentation that was common at the time within their pieces. So how to look at some of their compositions to get ideas
Aha.
about ornamentation and embellishment. And so I used a lot of that concept
Hmm.
when doing this. So
I think people could also look for help in. There were a lot of treatises written around that time. CPE, Bach, very famous. Quantz for flute players, very famous. Leopold Mozart.
mhm.
I think gets maybe heavy going to read all that, but to give yourself that background and this Levin, um, and then you almost have to forget that then and just
Yes. I'm so
delight in it.
I'm so glad you said that, Sandra, because I mean, I think you and I may have had a discussion about this, but I also had a discussion with two of my other piano colleagues about this whole topic. And both of them just said, I think at a point, just like you were saying, you need to do that sort of background stuff, then
Hmm.
put it aside,
Yeah.
and then you live with the piece, right? And
I
you
mean,
try different
it has to
things.
come from that place where improvisation would come from, right?
Yeah.
It has to be informed by practice, but it has to arise from that sort of inspired place, I think. Yeah.
Well, and that was the whole purpose of it in
Yeah.
at the beginning, right? So
Right.
I like the word inspiration. That's
Hmm.
yes. How does the music that is on the page, what does that inspire in us?
Yeah,
How
exactly.
can we highlight it?
I
Yeah.
really like how you mentioned that part of the goal here was to connect your spirit with Marianna's spirit in the music. Um, I think we always have to keep in mind what what is the goal of embellishment.
Right.
It can't be about, hey, look how fancy I am. I don't think that was at all a characteristic of classical time. Perhaps 19th century became about that
Yeah.
virtuosity for its own sake. But for me, the main goal in adding embellishment in this style, I just keep coming back to the word delight. It just has to
Yes.
just
Yes.
raise it up to this delight energy.
And that brings me to this. Like I found that I was feeling comfortable with some of my choices when while I was playing it and I would get to those moments of those embellishments, they made me smile.
Ah, exactly.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's
So I was
key.
like,
Absolutely.
and I would find myself saying, well, I don't know if it's right, but I don't care because it makes me just so delight in that spot,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
moment. And I saw
Beautiful.
that Dan just mentioned, yes, make it organic. Yeah, I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
that's what it has to be, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like there are the two components. And I think you find that in the vocal music of the time and violin music, flute music, the actual just ornamentation, straight like trails, turns, etc. And then more of the improvisatory, more, maybe around a cadenza, or instead of a triad, you would do a scalar kind of passage, or
Right.
yeah, or invert a passage that was going up. Oh no, I'm going to do it the other way. That
Exactly.
sort of improvisation. I think to keep in mind that there are the two options, and the more vocal music you hear from that time, and from the Baroque,
Yes.
you
Yes.
see that idea of embellishing in those ways for the repeat of the A section. And that just brings me to the question. So, on our channel, in our lives, we tend not to do the repeats
Right.
because we are, in this stressful situation of recording videos every week. And it's 2021. Who's got time for repeats? Anyway, but if you were to do the repeats in this piece, for example,
Yeah.
what would be different, or would it be this? Would you do the same thing both times, or would you do it without embellishment the first? What do you think?
Well, okay, so I chickened out, and part of the reason also I didn't do the repeats in this is because it was so much work for me personally to even come up with the embellishments for the return to the A section that I was like, there is no way I have the creative energy to do the repeats too, right? So I don't know. Now that I've done it a few times, I'm not quite sure. I think like the first repeat in the A section, I probably wouldn't do a whole lot. I think I've really come to this feeling that I like to reserve, or I'd like to, in this instance, reserve a lot of the higher embellishments for the return of the A section at the end. You know,
Uh-huh.
for me,
Right.
that just felt so good, and Dan's word organic. Um,
Yeah. Makes sense when you listen to it, I think. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, and what I've heard from people too is, if you do a repeat in a period of music like this, if you're not going to do anything different, then don't do the
Don't
repeat.
bother. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's kind of the attitude I adopted too. So,
Yeah.
because yeah.
But do you think if you did, this is just hypothetical because, like I say, who's got time for repeats these days? No, but would you dare to play it as exactly notated first time through, or you would
Oh,
embellish first time a little bit and then repeat with a little extra?
yeah, probably. Because I'm
Yeah.
still not convinced, especially with her sonata and this score. If you play just what's on the page, I think it would be okay, but I'm not sure. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? I really felt like it still needed a little bit of something. Um,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
that's just my taste and opinion. I don't know.
I mean, I must say that first time when I heard you were working on it, I played it through and it's like, well, it seems pretty good to me. Go, but
Yeah.
but then it makes way more sense to me now hearing what you've done with it. But I think it also, especially for a student, maybe you know, you could just do minimal
Absolutely.
additions of appoggiaturas or something. Yeah,
Absolutely. I mean,
and
I
it
think
still
that's
be
the
great.
thing. I think this is good for our viewers, or people that, because we have so many different pianists of different levels that engage.
Right.
And one of the main messages I wanted to get across with this little talk is that I think anybody at any level can try their hand at doing this
Hmm.
at your comfort level. So at the beginning,
Exactly.
you can play with, well, maybe try a little bit of a different ornament. If it says a trill, try an inverted mornet. I mean, and actually, it's not always consistent within the score, or the editor isn't. There's a couple ornaments in there.
Hmm.
Why is that there?
Right. Yeah, I
Um,
noticed you left out sometimes when it's notated as a trill
yeah,
that doesn't seem to go anywhere. That you just didn't like that. And
right.
that
Because
made sense to me.
yeah, so I just want to encourage people to start with that. Experiment with ornaments. It's a really good opportunity also for students to start to realize, oh, right, right, right. Ornamentation is a choice
Hmm.
a lot of the time in this period of time, especially.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so listen, and it gets the student to listen
Right.
and to
Yeah.
start making their own decisions about what they like and they don't like. And that's okay, you
I
know?
wonder if you, I'm not sure how many people have actually listened through your performance with the score. We would invite them to do that on our
Absolutely.
YouTube channel. But in case that isn't possible or hasn't happened yet, is
Yeah.
there a section somewhere where you say, okay, this is what it says and this is what I did?
Yeah, I thought about doing let's see, where is it? It's the development
Mm-hmm.
of the first movement. Um,
Great.
so I was trying to do this earlier. I'm gonna try to play it without my embellishments, and it's
Okay.
really hard.
Maybe
Um,
I should have done that part, but anyway, I'm not near my piano.
I thought of asking you, but I'm like, no, won't put you on the spot.
No
So
problem, but
I'm gonna start at kind of an odd spot, but I'm gonna be starting on page 168 of the score.
okay.
And I'll try to do exactly what's in the score, including the ornaments, which we'll see. So.
The,
A. So that's pretty much what's in the score. And I want to also mention, well, no, I'll mention that in the slide. Sorry. I
But
won't.
you already changed one thing, Erica.
What did I change?
In the first bar, you played the B an octave higher. Either that or this sound is funny. And you went brum, 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 and then you went up to the B
Oh, I think
instead
that
of
might
down.
have been the sound.
Okay,
Yeah, I just
that's so funny. That sounded an octave higher.
Oh, that's weird.
Thanks, Instagram. Okay.
Okay, so here's my version.
Yeah.
If I remember it now. Okay. Oh my gosh. So that's the same. Here we go. Little appoggiature.
Love it.
Up.
Oh, love it.
So yeah, and so kind of what I wanted to also say, especially for people that haven't done this much, is I came to realize that there's only a few things that you can use to, or not use. There were some tricks that I started with to help get myself thinking outside the box. And that was the easiest one is finding fillers. So if you have, right, if you have just a triad, just go
Right.
easy, right?
Right.
And then like you mentioned earlier too, if you've got a descending line, go up instead, right?
So delightful. So delightful.
Or
Yes.
find a way to shoot up an octave and then come back down. Anything, I think when you can expand the range of it, it's A, surprising to the audience, and it also expands the range and the timbre, right?
Yeah, good point. Excellent.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I used as my little clues of what to do. So
And also appoggiaturas.
yeah,
That would be the most satisfying thing in this style. Eh?
yeah, absolutely. And I think actually when you start adding these embellishments, because those embellishments add, at least for me, energy, it almost lends themselves to doing those appoggiaturas because it's like the appoggiatura is almost like a little bumper, right?
Yeah.
You've got this shooting energy and then the
It's a
bumper
release.
appoggiatura to release.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
so much fun, really.
So much fun. And I would encourage people to, take this to your Mozart and Haydn sonatas as well. And just like mess around in the privacy of your own studio. Just go wild. And then they say, okay, well, maybe that's a little bit 21st century, but it just opens that freedom to give it a go.
Yeah, yeah. Another thing I wanted to, this is what I was going to say a little bit earlier, was that one of the things that made me feel like I could do this too was that in this score, I don't know if you noticed, Sandra, you probably did, but there are a lot of little tiny notes that are added in the score.
Yes.
So if you didn't do the little tiny notes, they're usually fillers of the harmony, right?
Harmony, yeah.
But they're in tiny notes, which suggests to me that those are suggestions, not necessarily what you have to do. So to me, that was like an open door, right? It was like, well, you can start making these decisions for yourself. So
exactly, yeah.
Totally acceptable.
And that's very common in the second movement, right? Which is a little, also third movement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then another simple little thing that can happen is if you have a harmony, kind of a landing point on a harmony, roll it, arpeggiate it,
Exactly. Yep.
Because, I mean, this is called a piano sonata as far as how it's listed but this piano at this time was not that far removed from harpsichord. So there's going to be a lot of that sort of color that it might want.
And like I'm glad you mentioned that because even the first chord, I don't know if I did this in the recording, but now when I play the first chord of the second movement, it's always
yeah. Oh yeah.
It
It's
just
beautiful.
feels better that way.
Yeah.
And then you can do a different tempo of that roll when you do, when you come back to it or if you repeat.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so lots of fun. There's one more thing I want to just point out about this particular sonata for anybody that might be watching and wanting to play it. And that is in the transition between the exposition
Oh, yeah.
and the development in the first movement, I have cut out 2 whole beats of the rest. And that was something I really struggled with. But this is it's a very slow pulse in this movement,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's really
Yeah, it's allegro.
feeling the eighth note pulse, even though
Yeah.
it's allegro.
Yeah.
And so when you get to that 2.5 beats of rest at the end of the exposition, it is, in my mind, way too long.
Yeah.
So I just cut out 2 beats, which then I guess is kind of weird because then the second half is starting
Yeah.
on the third and fourth beats. But I decided it was okay because, interestingly enough, Sandra, when you get to the recap, the opening theme, that's the third beat.
So true. Yeah.
So really, if you cut out those 2 beats of rest in between the exposition and the development, you're just writing everything so that when you get to the recap.
Yeah, that is interesting. It's almost like this should be in 2/4 or the eighth should be quarters,
Who knows? But I think
Yeah.
that also is an interesting point in that, I think sometimes we get really caught up in
Mm-hmm.
bar lines, all of that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Also in doing what we're told, I mean, we we are trained to heed the score. What is the composer telling you with every single marking?
Yeah.
Maybe the markings are more approximate than, especially like we said, like it's not that she's had a lot of editions.
Right. Right.
So, yeah.
So
It would be
that
really nice to see a scholarly edition of, hey, there's a job for you.
I am
Oh, Henley, we have someone over here who wants to edit that for you.
I can think of somebody else, actually a friend of ours on Twitter that might be a better candidate.
Okay, yeah, yeah, or collaborate. No, but there aren't many versions of this. Like we only know this one, right?
Yes, as far as I know. Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's my 2 cents on the Marianna
Oh,
Martinez.
that's much more than 2 cents. Yeah. Is there anything else that we should?
Well, I thought we should also ask if anyone has any questions. I know there are some people
Yeah.
watching, so while we kind of sit here and gab a little bit at the end to close, that'll give you a second if anyone wants to ask a question. If not, that's okay too.
I would also just say I've been listening to quite a bit of Marianna Martinez music, orchestral music and vocal cantata type oratorio. Oh, just I recommend that to anyone who hasn't yet fallen in love with her. It's just incredible discoveries. Crazy, 277 years later.
Yeah, exactly. Better late than never.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I'm just delighted seeing that so many people really are enjoying discovering her music, as with all wonderful composers. So
yeah, exactly. So exciting. What a time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and thank you, Erica, for showing us your process, your journey, and your knowledge of this piece. Yeah, I want to go and play it now myself.
Yay! Well, thanks for chatting with me about it.
Okay. Well, we'll meet up again soon.
Sounds good. Bye,
Okay.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.